Good morning and welcome to Hatton Jewellery Institute's first Fireside Chat with artisans from all over the world. We are in the workshop, so we will not be noise free, but we are going to be joined by Stephany Gabriel from Liberté Engraving, who she's a former Hatton Jewellery Institute community member, actually based here in Hong Kong. She's now in New York, so I'm going to get her to join us, and she will be telling us all about her exciting journey as a master hand engraver. So we've got you. We've got you. Oh,
I am here.
Sorry about that. Yeah, nothing like a little bit of technical issues. I mean, it wouldn't be us without it.
That's true. It sure wouldn't.
But you just come back from work, right?
Yes.
So you've had a day of engraving.
I did. I had a really lovely day of engraving. Met some interesting people today. One particular interesting person. That's what I think is so great about this job. It's not that's a job. It's a community, and you get to meet some of your favorite celebrities every now and then.
So jealous.
So it's
it's
quite nice.
I did a really quick, very quick intro before you were joined, just to say, obviously, a master hand engraver. You're now based in New York. You used to be here in Hong Kong. Yes. So I just want to kind of kick it off. Just give people a chance to kind of get to know you. If you could just give us a bit of an intro. Obviously, we know you're an amazing engraver. How you got into engraving, obviously what you're doing now. Right. Then we'll kind of lead into where we can find your work and obviously your inspirations in a little bit.
So it, of course, begins in a small town in New Jersey, like any good story.
I feel like we're going to movie script territory now.
Right. And just, working as an apprentice, which I kind of got, I definitely think I got lucky. I started with this large brand at a very young age. I was 22 when I started, and it was just a summer job that led me to apply for an engraving apprenticeship that I didn't really understand just where it would take me.
So it's not like you weren't like a 15-year-old with a hunger for going, I want to be a hand engraver. It was a kind of a one step led to another.
The thing is I definitely was. I want to be a hand engraver, but it's just that's impossible.
So you did you at a young age, you knew it's something you wanted to do. It was just the path wasn't clear to you.
No idea how to do it. Like a lot of things, Yeah. Especially when it comes to jewelry, without the right kind of money, you're never gonna really get into the kind of schools and places that you want to get into. So education-wise, I definitely got lucky when I became a Tiffany & Co. apprentice, because that led me from a 3.5-year apprenticeship to a 1-year journeymanship in the States that eventually led me to Hong Kong, where I was working with them for more than 6 years and training with them and traveling. So definitely got lucky in my hand engraving education.
That's amazing. But I mean, what's really interesting then from that perspective is, hand engraving is such a personalized path. And you yourself are such you're a really kind of dynamic, strong individual that, to have kind of created that pathway within, or let's say kind of maybe forged that pathway since, given you started under quite almost like a corporate umbrella, which is kind of seems the antithesis, obviously, of kind of who you are and kind of your path in life. Right. So obviously you've gained a lot, but from the perspective of how you've kind of managed to maintain your sense of creative identity, as well as now go on to forge that to a greater length, given where you started? How did you find that? Did you find it challenging given the way you started, or?
Yes, because, when you're in the corporate environment, you are set to create by a set of rules. It has to be a certain way. And especially since a lot of it was lettering, there wasn't really room to sort of create in the way that I wanted to create as an engraver. And a lot of that also has to do with, the types of merchandise we were selling, particularly in Asia. I was young. I was still a baby engraver when I moved out there. And I got a whole continent to take care of.
I mean, yeah, because you were kind of heading up the team over here at one point, weren't you? Or you were the team.
I was the team. It was just me. And then I got lucky, and of course, like, now I look at it and I'm just like, well, I got to train 3 wonderful engravers during that time. And of course, it was a period of, balancing and hardship. But I think the one thing that I definitely could take out of that corporate experience, that particular one, was that I got to train 3 wonderful hand engravers who are women. So I'm very, I think, even though I'm under the corporate umbrella, and there are lots of engravers that, get to discover what kind of artist they are, whereas I had to work a little bit harder later on in life to really discover what kind of hand engraver I wanted to be. So it's very important.
Well, I can, and on that base, I want to come to kind of really talk about your work as well. But you've touched on something, obviously, which is a really important factor. Obviously, well, twofold. Obviously, you've mentioned education. Obviously, you've mentioned kind of women in the industry, of which, as we know, not just engraving, but the jewelry industry wide is a very male-dominant industry. But not only that, it's also very underrepresenting in terms of, obviously, ethnic minorities. And this is something obviously in not just in your professional, but in your personal life, you work really strongly to be able to ensure that people are supported and represented. So just I wanted to touch on that. There has actually been through Sotheby's in New York a recent exhibition, Black and Brilliant, of specifically black artisans. Whether or not you really feel there is enough being done, not just to welcome women, but particularly women of minority backgrounds into the industry. As you've said already, you have to have a certain amount of money to be able to go to the right colleges. So it kind of starts from that point on. So, if you're one thing having an exhibition for people, but you still have to have people at the point to be exhibited. So, I mean, how have you found that both in your career and then obviously in terms of what you feel should be addressed in the industry?
Right. So for me, as a hand engraver, it's already quite difficult as it is. In the United States, there aren't really any engraving clubs that you can be a part of to even enter yourself into a contest or anything like that for your creativity, unless you engrave guns. And that's a whole other can of worms. So, the UK probably has the best setup for hand engravers, but even in that field, I know only one person of color who's a hand engraver in the UK. I've never met another one. I don't know any other ones. That particular person, he never met another person of color who was a hand engraver. And I think that that's quite sad because, hand engraving is about telling stories. But if you're only telling one kind of story, you're leaving a whole demographic of people out of jewelry, out of, an opportunity to really embrace an art that is already so rare. So when we're talking about Black jewelers or Black people in the jewelry industry, other people of color in the industry, women in the industry, the fact that, we're so rare is, to me, very mind-boggling. And that it's taken only this level of protest to really kind of make people think about inviting more people of color to be highlighted. It's just kind of, I don't know, to me, you're so late in the game. What are you really going to do? Like, okay, so you're highlighting them, but are you giving people of color opportunities to learn how to do particular things in jewelry? Is there funding more than $1,000 that had to be, mostly created by other people of color in order to provide Black jewelers, especially with, the opportunity to even learn? It's just kind of like, well, at what point do we really want to take a step forward and really take action? Because right now you're just highlighting a few people, but where does the equity come in? Like, how do we build equity in this community for people who are making jewelry? How do we invite more people to learn? Because there's so many, like, I would love to be able to be at a jewelry school and be able to teach other people of color how to engrave. Because I know when people see me in the store, I'm not who they expect. They flat out told me, like, we expected an old white guy. But you got me.
Unfortunately, yes, yeah, exactly.
And so,
I think you highlight such an important point that it's, particularly when you yourself said that you wanted to become a jeweler, a hand engraver from a young age. Yeah. I mean, that's a very particularly niche focal point, and with a real passion and a vocation. So many young girls, obviously in particular, would not even know that that's a career path. So to be able to see you and see themselves in you would inspire them, so it doesn't become this mythical, I'm the wrong race, I'm the wrong gender, it's not even an option. It then becomes something that becomes you become kind of a trailblazer for them to kind of see what potentials are open to them. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you're definitely you're a trailblazer for us.
I'm trying to be, I want there, it's one of the things I said, like, when I started teaching apprentices in Hong Kong, I was just like, I just want an army of engraving women. That's it. I just want to build an army.
Sounds incredible. You are one of the million. You're definitely starting a movement. But obviously, you did touch on there. Obviously, engraving, it's storytelling. Or jewelry making is storytelling. Engraving, in particular, it's almost like a form of illustration, just with a different medium to pen and paper. And in the fact that obviously in telling your story, it's a really important way to tell a story. For you, again, from your background, you did touch on, sort of there's a lot of lettering, obviously you can imagine in a more corporate environment. What is from your perspective, what is the story you want to tell with your work? What is your ideal sort of way to work? And, where are your passion projects?
I think,
a million questions in one.
That's cool. So, I mean, I have 3 portraits that I really want to get done, because they tell a particular story about just my family and how they relate to the Loa of Haiti, which are just the Haitian deities in voodoo. And how, because in Western culture, there's this idea that, voodoo as a religion is something antichrist. It's just supposed to be something very bad, but it's really just something very spiritual. And it's something that our ancestors brought with them during the slave trade. And I do want to touch upon that story, because Haiti has such a deep history, a long history. And I do believe that this religion that led to our freedom is something that should be honored. And I really would just love to spend my time engraving metal portraits of people I love and incorporating those stories with them. And of course, I'm working on them when I can, but now that I'm working full time, it's going to be a little bit harder, but I'm going to work it out. I'm definitely going to work it out, because without those stories, I hear people who just don't even know certain things about Haiti. And in the news, of course, you see a lot of things about Haiti and a lot of tragedy and a lot of stories, but they don't often highlight the good things. They don't often highlight, someone like me, who's an artisan, who's of Haitian ancestry, who has a family who was able to come here, and because of them, I've been able to accomplish so much in a craft that's already so rare. And I wish I could just kind of allow myself to really just work on those stories and work on my portraits and take the time to really finish them, because it would bring up questions and answers for so many people, and it would sort of humanize the experiences of the Haitian people, as opposed to a lot of the time, the demonization of a country that has been through so much turmoil, and also just a lot of strife and success, and still be so loving and strong and surviving. So those kinds of stories, they can uplift the community, and that's what I really want to focus on doing.
And I love the way you're talking about it. Is also you're talking about creating a kind of an immortalization of stories that again become something that be passed through generations for future generations, that just it preserves both the story and the craftsmanship. So it's this beautiful kind of interwoven marriage between both your skill, your time, your craftsmanship, as well as these stories, which kind of feel like when coming together, it's just this immortalization, which also that just highlights just the importance, as we said, of representation within such a particularly niche part of an already niche industry. But there's clearly, without using a horribly coined phrase, work to be done. But
every day, I think, working every day.
Exactly. But I think you, purely by being you and by following this amazing creative path that you've chosen and doing the work that you were doing, then I think it really is. I mean, you are a living embodiment of that. Obviously, we'll post some of the pieces in our stories after this. But actually, then going on to the kind of the engraving direction that you're in now. You did touch on the fact that you are now working full time, that obviously you're not in the same corporate environment. You're in New York, but you're with a different environment. Clearly, you look fabulous. So one that suits you.
I mean, so I'm working with Foundry, which is a wonderful coupled-owned jewelry franchise, and honestly, it's refreshing. It's refreshing to still feel like my craft is a part of me, to go to work every day and to see that I'm appreciated and my craft is appreciated, that my craftsmanship is appreciated, that, customers come in and it's not like a drive-by glance. It's hellos, how are yous, interest in, what I'm doing, how I do it. And I love that. Like those were always the best parts of being, doing live engraving demonstrations. It's the people, it's of course, for me, the children. I love it when the kids come up to you and they ask you a million questions because, you know, they've never seen anything like this. And I think that with me being their introduction to engraving, it can really inspire them to be just better, bigger, better than they are. You know, it doesn't have to just be calligraphy or signs. You can play with metal, and you don't have to be a jeweler to do it. Like, I'm not a jeweler. I understand things. I've done some stuff, but you know, I don't have that extra little push to be able to be a jewelry engraver on a daily basis, except at work. Because for my own personal kind of engraving, it's not what I want to focus on.
So I think that's also very interesting. You know, what you've touched on there is then, I think maybe if kind of can clarify to people, because when I talk about you as an art engraver first and foremost, because I mean, I'll never forget watching you at the bench when you were kind of creating this magnificent dragon, just the giant
I love that
just
piece.
Masterpiece. Oh, I'm obsessed. And the fact that kind of you don't, you know, I think a lot of people probably hear engraving and think wedding band, you know, wedding date. And again, nothing wrong with that. Which is great.
Exactly. I love your secrets. I love your ring secrets. Give them
You're
to
the
me.
Secret keeper.
That's right. And I've always looked at myself as that when it comes to jewelry engraving on a you know, large scale. I'm definitely the person that like knows your secret. I know what's inside your wedding band, and that makes me feel like I'm part of your marriage. And I like that, you know? I like those little tidbits, those little love stories that I have no idea what they mean. These
it's
random
people involving
numbers.
You in their story.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you've chosen to trust me to immortalize, because that's what I'm doing. I am immortalizing your medal. Immortalizing your medal. And I appreciate that. I truly appreciate that. I love that you trust me enough to do this for you.
It's such a privilege. I think any craftsman really, when people are involved, when people come to you and trust you with a commission or whatever it might be, it is a privilege. But then stepping away from that, so you kind of to kind of help people understand, you really obviously have that side of the engraving. I don't even want to say industry, kind of skill set, but then it's kind of as if, you know, say the difference between kind of a calligraphy pen kind of writing out a beautiful prose versus then kind of taking kind of a pen and ink set and then kind of creating a huge piece of artwork. So you're kind of looking at the same tools, but you're then creating everything from your kind of your alphabet to your Sistine Chapel.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's what engraving is, you know. Someone asked me, like, what's like the most important thing you can do as an engraver? And my answer was just draw. Like, you will never understand how many hours you just need to spend just drawing. Even if it's a letter A or just a flower, just drawing every day is so important, because with engraving, like with a lot of things in our field, the drawing is the blueprint. And if you kind of ruin that blueprint, what do you think your engraving is going to look like?
It's easier to erase with a pencil than it is with a graver.
Much easier with a pencil than it is with a graver. It's like, man, you're going to be stoning for hours. Good luck.
So actually, on that basis, I mean, what is then the process for you? So taking, you know, something like your dragon, or something, obviously more importantly, pieces like your portraits, what's your process from start to finish?
So a lot of it is, like I said, very careful drawing, and then very carefully transferring that drawing onto the metal. And usually what I have to do is either I have to use like an ink sheet, like the kind that you used to use with like typewriters.
You mean like the carbon backed sheets?
Yeah. You either have to use that, or you can print it on like that clear acetate. Yep. So usually I'll probably just print it out on clear acetate and then have to measure it carefully so that I can transfer it onto my piece of metal, which I usually cover with a white watercolor. So you
white cover the metal, and then you transfer with acetone, so you then get the actual outline of the piece onto the metal.
Right. Onto the metal. And then from there, it's hours of scribing. Lots and lots of scribing, at least for me. Maybe it's not like that for every other engraver, but for me, I'm so cautious about each and every line. I won't scribe each and every line, but the basic outline is so important, because if at any point you get confused by what you're engraving, you could ruin your entire piece. And so scribing, definitely important. And then from there, just honestly, patience. Be patient, put on some music, put on a book, relax.
Good.
Keep your hand gentle. Yeah, keep your hand gentle, because engraving, everyone thinks that you have to like dig really, really hard to engrave. But honestly, the lighter your touch, the better off you'll be. Make sure your tools are sharpened and taken care of. You have to love them, because they're important.
Well, they're an extension of you at that point, aren't they? They're actually kind of creating,
Absolutely, well, because your hand guides the tool, but the tool can be temperamental that day. It might not want to function properly. You might have to sharpen it 5 times. Yeah, exactly. And that tool might be the reason your day is ruined. But that's okay. You just breathe through it and you just march on and you just keep at it, because that's the best thing you can do. If you really want to be an engraver, you have to really, really keep at it. Like anything else, it can be frustrating, like everything. But if you're passionate about it and you're willing to spend the hours drawing or cutting straight lines or, I don't know, mastering a point tool, then yeah, you're going to be as successful as you want to be. And it's not easy, but follow engravers, see if you can somehow get a class. Every now and then you might get lucky. Some engraver might come into your town and be doing a really quick master class that might not be so expensive. So if you are lucky, then go for it. But it's hard to even find those things. Like, to me, I think about the biggest places to go learn how to engrave is GRS, and you got to go to Kansas.
And well, not just that. It's as as wonderful as it is. Obviously, it's not for the faint-hearted on a pricing either.
No, it sure is.
So just in terms of the bar to entry for that is then also a different kind of setup, because the tooling is quite an investment. Whereas having taken your class, which was one of the most fun things ever, apart from literally digging myself into a hole, as much as I as a jeweler, you kind of go, oh, engraving, I can give this a go, and then you sit there and go, oh my god, I am back to square one. I don't know what I'm doing, and it's very humbling. But I mean, what's wonderful about watching you work is that you really are such a traditional engraver, right down to the way you sharpen your tools. Yes. You don't have a hugely expensive setup. You've just got very carefully chosen, well looked after, curated gravers that, as you say, you treat like are your the extension
they are
of
your
yourself.
Loved ones.
Yeah,
at that point,
exactly.
They are your loved ones.
But so from your perspective, you are seeing how you've worked and shared your knowledge. the biggest investment is the time. It's not a hugely technical setup with a lot of expensive equipment, which again, I think you've touched, things like gun engraving, that does seem to be because it's different type of material. If you're engraving on steel, but in terms of more kind of art engraving, then it feels like you are, you are a real traditionalist.
Yes, I'm set up to be on the go. I don't have to worry about, I don't have to worry about a microscope. I don't have to worry about these things because my training was so traditional that, I walk around and I forget my loop is on my head half the time. I forget that it's sitting there. The other night I came home with it and I was just like, really? Nobody told me this was on my head? And
to be fair, you did leave the studio here a few times with it with it perched,
always.
but it kind of just looks so cool. You kind of don't.
I don't even it's just part of you. You don't even think about it. But to be able, to make your tools from beginning to end, and to be able to really take care of them, to sharpen them on an India stone, to get the angles right on a power hone, all of those things are really imperative to being a traditional hand engraver. But, it gives you the freedom to create any way you want. You don't have to carry so many tools with you. You really just need, in my opinion, you really just need five major gravers, 3 liners, a point tool and a square off tool, and you're good to go. An India stone and some oil to sharpen it, a sharpener, and your pencil and your scriber. And of course your watercolor. If you feel you need it. Some people can just freestyle. I can't do that. But
it's just it's a different way of working.
Yeah, for me it's I have to paint it on. I have to make sure everything's perfect. It's just very very
you're saying you're a perfectionist.
Yes, exactly. I'm just a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to the engraving, but I have to be. It's my craft, and it's one of the things that you give away, and a lot of the times the customer is just excited to have it, but you give it away and then I never get to see it again. I never ever.
You're letting it free into the world.
Yeah, I'll never get to see that engraving again, unless I don't know, you want me to add more to it, which is very rare. But once it's gone, once I've done it, it's out of my hands. It's your possession now. I've just left a little bit of a mark of myself on it. Because I could definitely identify in a room full of engravings. If a person told me that, they got a ring in Hong Kong between the years of 2012 and 2018, I could tell you I did it.
That's me.
I can of course I could probably choose through a few of my apprentices, but I probably did it.
I love that. And one thing kind of to kind of really sort of to end on, because I know you and I could talk for hours, which as much as I would love to.
Forever.
I think a lot of people obviously sometimes see engraving nowadays. Well, to be honest, everything in the jewelry industry has become ever more kind of technology focused, and obviously there's a great place for that in the industry. But I think as a result, people often see that so much is sort of mechanized. They assume that everything is mechanized. So therefore, there's always going to be a machine doing one of the processes. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I think a lot of people see, particularly in the kind of the arena of kind of engraving inside rings and those kind of objects, really do see it as more of a machine-oriented thing, mm-hmm. rather than necessarily hand engraved, because obviously they don't see people like you very often. And I just to kind of quote the quote that you referenced was obviously was the Marcus Aurelius. It said, "When a loaf of bread, for instance, is in the oven, cracks appear in it here and there, and these flaws, though not intended in the baking, have a rightness of their own." And when you said that, I thought that was just so perfect, because the whole point of hand engraving is you're not a machine. You are this wonderful, living, breathing, beautiful human being, and everything. It's as you yourself said, it's perfectly imperfect, and
Absolutely.
That's what makes it so unique.
That's what makes it so special. You know, I think that, you know, machine engraving is great for the things that it's great for. You know,
there's a place for it.
There's a place for it in our society, absolutely. But when it comes to your jewelry, the things that you love, the things that you wear, the things that you gift, the things that will last, you know, lifetimes, be passed down, family member to family member, mother to daughter, or mother to son, father to son, whoever. It's like when they look inside of that wedding band, you know, is a tiny little machine engraving inscription really what you want to see? Or do you want to see a beautiful hand engraved inscription that, of course, can be manipulated size-wise because a person is doing it? It's not limited to the settings of a machine. It's not limited. It's also just more beautiful because it looks, as I said before, perfectly imperfect. Like, it's not exactly cold machine engraving, which I think machine engraving is. It's just so, it doesn't look alive when you see it. It doesn't really jump at you, you know, whereas hand engraving is so warm and inviting because, you know, a person sat there, took their time, and, you know, the love of their craft to really give you something that is uniquely your own, because that's what engraving does. It makes it yours. You can buy it from any store you want. It doesn't matter. I'm the person that makes that piece belong to you, that makes that piece, you know, yours for generations, no matter who sees it. You know, those are your initials. These are your dates. These are your children's names, whatever that is. Like, that story, that engraving is a story in and of itself. And that's what we're trying to do here.
I feel like we need to be renaming you Steph the Storyteller.
I know. I'm a great storyteller. You should ask my boyfriend.
Oh, sweetheart. Well, as much as I wish we could keep you forever, we will draw this to a close. But just I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little piece of you. I mean, obviously, you know, the team out here at Hatton missed you heart and soul. I'm sitting here
every day.
What was your bench?
Every day. You, Agnes, Rachel, Jan, every day. Bianca, everybody, every single day. I'm just like, oh man, I like being with Hatton was when I really got that chance to learn how to be the kind of artist that I'm hoping to become, because I'm still working on it. Like, a lot of us are still working on it. Yeah. You know, as successful as we are, we're still growing as artists. We're still learning what does it even mean.
I hope we never stop learning. But you know, we're forever grateful for the day you came and found us here. And even though you're not here in person, we love you as part of our community from afar, and just are so excited to see you continuing to grow, joining an amazing team. I'm sure the team at Foundry know how lucky they are to have you.
They're great. Love.
They are, you know, sort of anyone else's, our loss is their gain. But we miss you and we love you with all our heart. But we hopefully will be able to catch up with you again maybe in the next few months, when, you know, and I know you've just moved, so we are going to share some images of your work on our Instagram page, so people
Awesome.
can have a look at that. But maybe once you kind of a bit more kind of, if you've got a sort of set up, and we can kind of maybe do another one of these, and we can actually maybe focus on some of your portraits. Maybe we can kind of go through an opportunity so you can really show people your portraits and talk people through the process. We actually, before we do have quite a few people on. We've had a couple of people going, no questions. So before we disappear, if anyone in the last minute wants to shoot us a question, we have a couple of people going, can we not? I think we've got time for maybe one or two questions.
All right.
Because I think that your crowds are clamoring.
Oh, wow.
So no, I'll give people a quick chance to do that. And I know I'm conscious of the time before obviously you shoot off. But on that, I know that people were asking, are you going to be coming back to visit?
Of course I'm coming back to visit. Hong Kong is still my home. It's still Hong Kong. You know?
Hong Kong all the way. Hong Kong, exactly. Well, obviously, hopefully you'll be back as soon as quarantine restrictions allow.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you guys a lot of luck, but maybe it's, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it is what it is at this point.
Exactly, but we just utilize the technology as it is. But also, I think there are a couple of questions coming. What I will do, rather than kind of elongate what you've after your long day. Quick one. What are some techniques and styles that you would still love to learn, and why? From Kirby Polecat.
Okay, Kirby Polecat. I know who you are. So, of course, I'm dying to learn Florentine engraving. That is definitely my number one engraving technique, because I think that it would really stabilize me towards a potential path into more jewelry engraving of my own in the future. So it's more like where I'd like to be in the future when I decide that I want to make all of my beautiful rings. I'd like to know how to do Florentine engraving for that. Yeah, what was the other half of that question?
It was the and why, but you answered the and why at the same time. So actually, again, what would be really great is if we can post a sample of Florentine engraving, so people can kind of get an understanding of what that is. Obviously, that so people can understand why it's so particularly special.
It's very special.
But no, really great question. And no, we do have a couple more that I know people have messaged us. So what we'll do, we'll message you the questions, Steph. So when you get the chance to answer them, what we can do is we'll just then put them as part of the post with some images of your work. So equally, if anyone else has any questions, please do DM them to us, and we will share them with Steph so that we can then put a little Q&A on the Instagram post, so people can kind of get a good sense of it afterwards. And well, what was meant to be about half-hour chat is, as I said, we could go for hours, but at the risk of never letting you go, we will send you all our love, and you get some rest after a long day. And seeing as your Monday's nearly over, I can attest Tuesday's looking good.
Oh, that's good to know.
We're ready there.
That's good to know. I'm glad.
All right, my darling.
I was a little iffy about it.
You were going to hang back in Monday.
Yeah.
Come join us on Tuesday.
I'd love to.
All right, darling. Much love, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.